listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast, with the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't focus on the superstars and only focuses on the lesser knowns to get you through in your Keeper Leagues. I'm joined by Kays tonight. How are you, mate?
Good, Heff. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Nice, relaxing weekend. It was the first weekend, I reckon, in about a month where I didn't have either a wedding or a buck show or a first birthday party or something to go to. So it was just great to put the feet up on the couch and just do nothing.
So you were sober?
No, I had a few beers. Those people who were on my Instagram would have noticed I was posting a few crafties that I was getting stuck into over the weekend. So no, I had a few beers, but yeah, nothing crazy. Just a few around the house. And yeah, what about you? What'd you do?
Pretty quiet weekend for me, but I think the highlight of my year so far, I met Alice Cooper today at work.
Okay, yes. Tell us more about that. How'd you meet him?
He's a mad keen golfer, and I happen to work at a golf club in Adelaide, so he popped up for a round and got a little chat with the great man. So
yeah,
he definitely supersedes the other famous people I've met in my life.
And not a bad golfer by the sounds.
He plays off 5, so anyone who knows anything about golf, he
at
can,
the age of
72.
5 or 72.
Hits a nice ball for an old guy. So
I can't even get under 20 at the moment.
Oh man, don't even talk to me about my golf game. It's bad.
Anyway, we'll get stuck into this week's podcast. So yeah, this week we're talking about Port Adelaide, and that's it. No, we'll talk about a few more clubs as well. We got Richmond and St Kilda in there as well. So we'll get stuck into those in a sec. But first of all, we're going to talk about. We're going to go to our league spotlight. This week we've got Churto from Tasmania, a regular on the social media. So let's hear about his Keeper League this week. Thanks for that one, Churto. Thanks for joining us this week and telling us about your league. Interesting to hear about those rule changes, Kays. There's always a few cheats out there, isn't there, that you've got to got to change the rules for.
I know it's the start of the season, so we might do some trades now. I'd like to trade Churto into our league and you out, because you are a massive culprit for the 1 week loan cheat gentleman's agreement.
I'm not never on the receiving end of those though.
Yeah,
my philosophy is that karma. If ever I need a favour, I'll get it back or something like that. So
juggies need a fix from somewhere, and you're giving it to them. You're the dealer.
I'm more than happy to get rid of it though. I find it really hard to say when a mate approaches you with the big brown puppy dog eyes that you've got to I've got to help him out. I'm just a good bloke, mate.
You're a dick, mate. You're a dick.
All right, let's move on to the analysis. And first up, we got Port Adelaide. All right, first up this week, we're talking about Port Adelaide, the club that doesn't get enough airtime on this podcast, I don't think. We don't talk about them enough on here, Case. So time to actually finally knuckle down and look at the best football club in the country.
Now, I have to ask a question to you. So, we saw West Coast re-record their theme song last week.
Yep.
Will Port have to do it because now that their stringent nickname regulations and their theme song breaks protocol there, so the power from Port is no longer accepted in the vocabulary down at Alberton. So I think it's time.
It's just not in print media, Case. I think you've misconstrued that one.
Oh, it could be a
print
good
media,
option for Bad Dreams or something to re-record the Port Adelaide theme song.
That couldn't be any worse than the one we currently got. So
it's a stinker.
Yeah, I'll take a new one any day of the week.
Well, anyway, moving on to actual fantasy stuff, we'll have a look at the Port Adelaide Best 22. For me, so in defence, Jack Watts, Tom Cleary and Darcy Byrne-Jones, Hamish Hartlett, Tom Jonas and Ryan Burton on the half-back line, Dan Houston, Tom Rockcliffe and Xavier Dersmar through the middle with Scott Lysett, Travis Boak and Ollie Wines. Forward line of Robbie Gray, Justin Westhoff and Connor Rosie with Zach Butters, Charlie Dixon and Brad Ebert. On the pine, we'll have Stevie Motlop, Sam Pelpepper and Riley Bonner along with Carl Amon.
Now, I know your positions don't mean that much. You kind of chop and change and move it around, but I just can't see Dan Houston on a wing. It's a bit too slow for that position. So Carl Amon would have to come on there for me. Okay. It's actually really hard to see, even though I guess it's going to be obvious that he's going to jump in for Ollie Wines, who's now injured. But with the full midfield in there, once you've got to start there, it's actually hard to see where Dan Houston fits into that midfield. There needs to be a few injuries and stuff, which there is, for him to really, I think, go into their full time. But that said, there's lots of talk in the media that he's going to play there full time. It's just when you look at Port Adelaide's side, it's actually hard to see where he does fit.
It's not a bad side, really. They should be performing a lot better than they are. We won't go into the hashtag #SackKen movement, but with
preaching to the choir, mate.
With Ollie out, who jumps into that spot, you reckon?
I think Willem Drew will probably come in and play, at least fill up one of those bench spots and kind of be that inside ball that we'll need. The other one I think is interesting for my take is I think Todd Marshall will be playing a lot more this season, and I think Justin Westhoff, there's been talk of him kind of filling in Dougal Howard's role where he's going to play a bit more in defence or maybe a bit more loose in defence this season as well. So that's what he's been earmarked to do as well.
Which is good for his fantasy numbers because he takes a great intercept grab, the big off.
Wow. Is he still... No, he's a back forward, isn't he, this year?
Forward,
yeah, okay, so it doesn't really matter about he's already got the position there, which actually could be handy in keeper leagues. He's probably going to be in a lot of pools this year, and if he if he plays it just loose in defence, then he might be able to rack him up.
And the guy's still fit as ever. He could play for another couple of years, no dramas.
Guy can run for days.
He can.
All right. Let's get stuck into players.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Dan Houston. So this guy is set to explode this season. After playing Australia in the halfback flank for the first few years, he's made his move into the midfield last season. So he was in and out. He played some 4 games in there, did stints in there last season. But the games when he did play 4 games in the midfield really stood out as some of the scoring he could actually produce. So he averaged 81 for the year. But let's look at his late season numbers because it was the end of the year more so that he kind of moved into the midfield.
Yep.
So late season, his last 10 he averaged 85. Okay, last 5 he averaged 103, and his last 3 averaged 96. So that's some pretty good numbers if you can get him. I guess you're going to get him as a defender, but hopefully he'll be playing in the guts a lot more. So Ollie Wines has been placed on the long-term injury list. There's the media over here is just always talking about Dan Houston's the next big thing. He's going to be playing midfield this year, bye-bye defence, that sort of stuff. But in Ultimate Footy, he retains back status. So that's pretty handy for us. I guess the main concern is that he's not going to be a defender for very long by the sounds of things. That's pretty much all there is about Dan Houston. I think he's going to have a great year. What do you think, Case?
He is. I remember watching him in that last game last year at Adelaide Oval when there was a flag on the line and we were cheering every Dan Houston touch.
It was, just to recap for our listeners, it was Dan Houston versus Travis Boak.
Yep.
Scores were basically level at the start of the game, and I guess the guy we didn't want to win had Travis Boak and the underdog had Dan Houston.
And Dan Houston had a massive first 3 quarters, I think, and then kind of went missing in that last quarter. But that was a bit of fun. I'm obviously all on board Dan Houston this year for sure. I think just it's a bit annoying because the hype train has well and truly left the station and everyone's hearing Dan Houston everywhere, no matter where you are, whether you're in Adelaide or whether you're on Twitter, etc. So you're never going to get him for cheap anymore because, of what he should be doing this season. It does help that Ollie Wines is obviously out, and there was that, as we were saying before, there was the potential of, not really knowing where he's going to fit, but now he's obviously going to step straight into that starting midfield and should dominate. I enjoy watching him play footy, and I think he's going to be a very, very good fantasy scorer going forward.
Cool. Let's move on to your first player, Case.
Well, I may as well talk about Willem Drew first up. So now that Ollie Wines is gone, it definitely opens up a spot for the SANFL pig, which is Willem Drew. So both inside balls. Drew probably just didn't take his opportunity last year when it was given to him. So he played the first 8 games of the AFL season and then spent the rest of 2019 mainly in the twos. So he started off the year very well, 86 and 92 from his first 2 games, then kind of flailed. So Drew returned for the round 15 game and then back for the round 23 game where he actually got his career best 93 points there. So if you can see something like that in the AFL heading forward, that's going to be very good. So he averaged 6 tackles a game, which we do love, and obviously that's that inside role coming through. Interestingly, he actually ranked 20th overall in the AFL for tackles per game. So his numbers are up there, and we do love a tackler on their keeper league. So in his SANFL games, played 13 in the end last year. He scored the pig for a reason. He averaged 109 in the Sandful.
Is he actually called the pig? I've never heard him called the pig.
I'm calling him the pig.
I get
the SANFL pig.
Yep, I get
pumping, like we were talking Braden Pruce last week before he obviously went down today, which is unfortunate.
I'll let you have this one.
Yes.
That's fine.
27 touches, 8 tackles in the Sandful, so that's pretty good. And only a low of 80, which is fantastic, and had highs of 134 and 136. So for me, he definitely has the ability. I think it's just the opportunity that has eluded him. But I think with Ollie Wines out, I think he should slot into that role and should be a big watch this year.
I think Wines' nickname is actually Wall at Port Adelaide. It's one of his many nicknames anyway. So
we've got Wall and the pig.
Bang on, mate.
Yeah, sweet.
You had it right the first time.
Good.
I'm saying. Willem Drew, this opportunity is gold for him now to actually come in. I'm not 100% sure how long Ollie Wines is going to be out for, because really he did the same injury to the different shoulder, the opposite shoulder last year, at the same time last season, was back by round 3. So I think this one's going to be longer. He has been placed on the long-term injury list, but I think that's more of a ploy to maybe get someone else in before the season starts.
It was something about having a full list
Yeah.
to pick from.
Yeah.
Is there a rule that you have to be on the
No,
LTI
the only
for
thing.
a while?
Well, the only thing is if you've got one person out injured, you might be able to get a supplementary player in.
Right.
So, but it depends.
Sneaky.
I think it also depends how long he's out for as well. So if he's out, he's out. So that's the thing.
But if he's only actually going to come good round 1, he has to play in the 2s for a couple of weeks like he did last year.
Last year
So,
he played
yeah.
round 3. He came back. So that helped Will and Drew. But we saw anyway that Will and Drew stayed in the side with him in there anyway because he performed so well in the first few weeks.
It's just his numbers then drop.
Yeah,
once
exactly,
one comes back
exactly.
in.
But I think, look, another year in the system, a little bit more opportunity. Like even blokes like Rocky, like you don't know how much game time he's going to be playing these days. He's getting a bit slow. Sam Powell-Peppers, talk to move up forward, not going in the midfield anymore.
Weird.
There might be more of a spot for him in there this year than we actually think. So, I don't know. Stay tuned for that one.
Fingers crossed.
All right, my next player, I'm going to talk about Riley Bonner. And I guess this is a bit of a flow on from Dan Houston because he benefited a lot from Houston's move into the midfield last season. Look, take round 19, for example. Houston played midfield that whole game. I went through and had a look at the highlights on Stats Pro of that game just to make sure. And, Bonner had 111 just sliding into that halfback role. So he did it pretty nicely. He averaged 66 for the season, but 75 from his last 5. And look, Dougal Howard comes out, which means someone has to go on defence because there's no real tools apart from Leanett if you count him. But Leanett doesn't really play tall anyway. So someone's got to go into that side. And with now, Wine's out then at flow on from Houston in. He's going to have a spot, I think. So is what I'm trying to say. So for me, though, the disposal for him is a real worry. And it's probably what keeps him out of the team a lot of the time. But again, I think he's just going to be given a lot more opportunity. I think the pressure's off some of these younger guys to perform. Now it's more about development and things like that. So, look, I reckon he would get a decent crack at it this year. High 70s, I think he could go if everything goes to plan. And then, it should be a more permanent addition. Either him or Leanett, but we'll have to wait and see there, I guess.
Yeah. For me, he's a tough one to, what do you do? Do you keep him or not? So I think I'm coming up to this point where have to put our keeper submission in for our draft that we did here for the pod last year, and we keep 20 out of the 40.
Oh shit, we have to do that.
And my defender ranks aren't great, but Bryce Gibbs getting the defender in Ultimate Footy this year is a bit of a godsend, and Bonner was kind of on the cut line there. So for me, it's almost like a Bonner, Taylor, Jaman, those kind of guys because it's really bad because I took Whitfield and Whitfield's obviously gone to forward, which hasn't helped me. So
At least you got a decent forward though.
I do have a good forward line. So, but someone like Bonner's just a really bloody tough one because I know probably a lot of people would have taken the punt on keeping him last year and then he kind of let them down. What do you do going this year? Do you delist him and then hope you can get him, mid this draft?
Well, if you're delisting him, you've hopefully just got someone better to replace him, and if he comes to you, he does. If he doesn't, it's no big loss, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rightio, my next player, Kane Farrell. So he's actually getting a bit of pre-season hype coming from the Port Adelaide Footy Club this year. There's a few players talking up his pre-season form, and he actually is not a bad small forward at all. So he played 7 AFL games last year, played from rounds 8 to 15, and only had the 45 average points in his second year, but did kick 11 goals in those 7 games, which is not too bad for a young small forward. Had an 80-point PB in round 14 against the Suns, which featured 14 touches and 3 goals. So with only playing 7 AFL games, he obviously played a fair bit in the Sandful, notched up 15 games there for a 77 average with 12 kicks, 5 handballs, 5 marks, 3 tackles and a goal per game. So he had a 109-point PB, which came throughout that year, and his last 4-game average in the Sandful was 91. So for a small forward, looking at his numbers, his tackle numbers aren't big enough, but that's something that he can build on, obviously getting some bigger body size and that kind of thing. So with Sam Gray gone, who played a fair bit of footy for the Power last year, and Farrell getting a 3-year deal given to him, is that a bit of a sign of faith from Port Adelaide that he's going to be that next, forward up there? And coming into his 3rd-year breakout, Heff, he's a 3rd-year breakout on the cards.
It's a given.
It really depends, I suppose, if you're kind of happy for that 70 average forward from now, and do we think that there's anything further along the line for him? It's hard to see, especially with guys like Rosie and Butters and those guys kind of coming on. From their first year, they've leapfrogged guys like Farrell. So interesting. I could probably take a bit of a flyer on him late as a forward.
I think saying a 70 average from a guy who averaged 45 last season is a bit of a flyer, I reckon. I don't think he'll get that high. But look, he might be all right if he can cement his spot in the team and can actually start. Just getting some games together and actually putting some scores together, he might turn into something that you could actually use off a bench every now and then. But it's not for me. But if you look at my team, I just need to pick players that are actually going to play this year because my keepers are not even guaranteed best 22. So if he's one of those players that's playing each week, he's definitely someone I'll consider.
Cool. Who you got next?
All right, I'm going to talk about Ryan Burton, one of your boys, Case.
Yeah,
you
my
own
boy.
him.
He's not really my boy. I just own him.
Yeah, you own him.
Yeah.
I thought that's what the definition really of a boy is, really.
I have him, but am I really invested in his life? No.
Can you trade him for me? I'll have him as one of my boys.
Yeah, who are you going to give me in return?
I don't know. We'll figure it out later.
Some shit like Heath Shaw or something crap.
I've traded him. Second in the Rising Star in 2017, Ryan Burton averaged 84 points in that season, but he hasn't lived up to those heights since. So Burton, he's a little injury prone. He's a great footballer when he's fit, though. Last season, he was looking a lot better coming across to Port Adelaide. I think, when players move to a new club, they always stand up a little bit more. And it was a bit of a given that Burton was going to have a better season than the previous year, I think. But yeah, average 72 last year. Well, that's with 2 injury-affected scores. If you take up Burton's 2 injury-affected scores, he comes up to 79, which is 1 off 80.
Good.
Which for me, 80 is the benchmark for, or the bar for Yeah, I reckon.
Solid defender.
Yeah, you need a good defender. He's averaging 80. That's when they become, in your keepers, firmly entrenched in your keepers.
Definitely.
So, he also stunk up a few games late after coming back from injury as well. I think he had a big, 4 weeks out late in the year and come back for the last 2 rounds and just looked off the pace a little bit. So I think that 72 average is a little bit deceiving as to where he could actually be this season. So I think he's going to sneak into the 80s this year. He's a player that's likely to keep his back status for a long time as well. He's not going to run off in the midfield. He's not going to go up forward. We can play it forward, but he's more likely to stay at back. I think he goes 80 plus this year. Should do it pretty easy if he's fit. What do you think?
100%. Well, I'm keeping him, so I'm backing in Ryan. Look, you've only got to assume that that first year he kind of broke onto the scene at Hawthorn. He probably averaged 80 back then. I can't remember with no stats off the top of my head, but
it was 84.
Yeah, he was super good in that season, and then obviously injury hit him the year later, and he just kind of floundered a bit. So I reckon he's probably a bit more settled in the Port lineup. Should have a full preseason under his belt. He could be one of the really, really consistent backmen of this year, I think, in fantasy-wise. He may never set the world on fire in terms of hundreds and stuff like that, but, you just need those backs, as you said, who are scoring mid-80s each week, and you're going to be happy with them.
You build
each and every
premierships
week.
around those 80 average players.
Yeah, and as you said, he's going to lock him in for years and years. He's still young, going to be a backman forever. Tick, tick, tick for me.
Yep.
My last player is your boy, Carly Amon. So, kind of interesting to me that he stayed at the Power last year after the lure came out to go home to Victoria.
After having a good season with lots of interest coming as well.
Yeah, I think there was a fair bit of cash coming to Carl, but he turned it down to stay in Port Adelaide, which is interesting.
Culture, players want to be there.
They want to play for Ken.
Fuck.
You said it. 59 games he's played now, and it's his 7th year on the list, so he's actually been around for a lot longer than I kind of thought. But saying that, I still think he's building into something as a player, because he's that slight build. He's got pace, as you said before. But I think he's going to be one to watch this season. So he was consistent enough in the AFL last year, averaged 76.4. And apart from his round 2 game where he got injured, his lowest score was only 60, which is not too bad. If one of your players bombs and 60 is their worst score, I'd take that any day of the week. So notched up 200s last year, just the low ones of 103 and 106. Did have the 490s as well, and a last 5 average of 80. So he only played the 2 sample games last year, 105 and a 99, and kind of just showed he was too good for that level. So I think with the pace that he brings to the Port Adelaide side, they need that. So he's going to be playing each and every week in 2020. But for me, I think he's going to kind of be like that Jared Polek, Paul Seedsman kind of wing player where, they're great for an M5, M6, M7 if you're playing that deep.
Yeah.
He'll get you that 80, 90, potentially 100 if they go bananas. But, that's still a really important role player in most sides. So if you have him, I'd be keeping him for sure. I think he's got plenty of upside.
Yeah.
But if you are, if he's in the draft pool, I think you can take him early, and he's just going to fill that gap for you, be pretty consistent each week, which we've seen, and he may surprise. You just never know. So I'd be happy to go early with him. It looks like he's got plenty of talent.
I've got a good feeling about him. I reckon he'll be up there with some of the better wingers in the competition. So not some of the best midfielders in the comp, but some of the better wingers, those guys that play purely outside, don't get the contested touches to boost their numbers up to 105, 106, but definitely got a potential to average in the 90s if everything goes his way and he starts to actually string a few good games together.
100% agree.
All right, that felt like we got through the Port Adelaide pretty quick. So,
thank God.
Yeah, we'll move on to
Everyone is
Richmond.
breathing a sigh of relief all around Australia.
We'll move on to Richmond and we'll keep smashing through this podcast.
Away from Tigerland, a
All right, K's on to the reigning premiers. This should be an easy best 22 to pick, shouldn't it?
I'd say
lots
so.
of guns in there. Let's pick the grand final team and they'll probably win it again.
And after listening to your atrocious club theme song, that's one of the best in the league by a mile.
Yeah, I think we started last year's Richmond analysis by saying the same thing, I reckon.
Yeah, but it just needs to be
It's
said.
true. It's timeless.
That needs to be said.
Right.
Rightio, on to the best 22 for the Tigers. In defence, David Asprey, Dylan Grimes and Jaden Short. Nick Voston, Nathan Broad and Bashar Hooley. Through the wings, Sydney Stack, Dusty Martin and Jack Graham. In the ruck, Toby Nankervis, Dion Prestia and Trent Cochin. Forward line of Shane Edwards, Jack Rewalt and Kane Lambert with Jason Castagna, Tom Lynch and Shai Bolton. Which leaves Josh Caddy, Daniel Rioli, Marlon Piggott and Ivan Soldo on the pine.
No, I don't mind this one, Kaz. I reckon you've done a pretty good job of that one. The only change is like a really small and players names that you're kind of used to seeing in there, but they're not fantasy relevant anyway, so it's not really worth bringing up. So I think you've done a good job of this one. The only one I'm thinking of maybe is like Marlon Pickett. I know he had that good grand final, but we'll talk about him a bit more later in this podcast. But what about Jack Higgins? Where's he?
It's kind of hard to peg, I think, unfortunately, just with his health issues. And we probably, yes, he was in their best 22 when he was up and going, but it's kind of hard to see where he might fit in with what's happened last year in terms of the Tigers winning the flag. So I think, one that I'm happy to kind of leave out, especially how well, Pickett, Bolton, Rioli, those kind of guys have done last year since Higgins has been out the team. So hopefully he gets back to it because he's a fun little player to watch.
So going back to Pickett as well, there's kind of the Twitter sphere is kind of divided whether he's actually in their best 22 or not. A lot of people saying, with players like Graham coming back in and, people that missed out in the grand final that he might not actually be in the side, but you've got him in there.
Jeez. He just looks so damn good in that grand final.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, there have been, obviously, Brandon Ellis is out of the side this year.
Yeah, that's true.
Across.
Yeah.
So, that's one spot that's opened up if you want to try and sneak some other guys in there. So, Sydney Stack's not even in that side there too. So, there's a few guys around the mark who could slide into that best 22. Obviously, Stack found his way on the outer towards the grand final after an injury. So, there's plenty of talent in the Richmond side.
All right, let's get stuck into some players. I'll let you lead the way on this one, Kay. Who you got first up?
Rightio. I have Shai Bolton. So we actually got a question about him early last season, and they were like, someone said, is Shai Bolton ever going to be fantasy relevant? And we were both like, lol, definitely not. But wow, we were wrong. He actually can play footy and can score fantasy wise. So week to week, he's kind of a hard player to find and field because, his scoring ability definitely depends on his role and where he sits in that side. So, started the year in the VFL and played 4 games for 114-point average. He had 18 kicks, 9 handballs and 8 tackles there. So, was flying early on in the year and then kind of moved into the Tigers' best 22 there, but had like an absolute plethora of scores there. He either scored 26 or 116 and everything in between. So midfield Shai is like a fantastic version of Shai. He's the great prospect. But forward Shai is a bad Shai. So when he's in the guts, racking up touches with ease, tackles and even gets forward and finds the goals. But when he's playing that pressure forward role, it's just really, really bad news for fantasy coaches. So for me, he's almost someone I want to take, but at the same time you go, like, when can you play him? It's not like there's he's going to go well against poor teams because he might just be playing that pressure forward role against poor teams. So you can't really just pencil in when he's going to score well, which makes it a head scratcher and one that you have to be a bit risky or a bit, wary of what he could do. So, and as you're saying, because the Tigers side runs quite deep, especially for that midfield opportunity, it's not like somebody can go, he had some good games last year. He's going to roll into that midfield this year and be good again. So it's really like, yes, he has so much upside, but when do you take him in a draft or when do you actually feel confident to field him? It's a tough one. Yeah,
he's another one I've watched pretty closely over the past year or so. But just noticed a few things like, one of his huge midfield performances was against Gold Coast and it kind of looked like they were just trying him out, giving him a run there. That said, he did play a couple of weeks ago later in the midfield against GWS, but again, that was a game where a lot of midfielders were injured and things like that. So he seems to kind of be the next in line for the midfielder. The only thing is I just can't see his role changing this year. Like he's going to be playing as predominantly a forward, but at times he can score as a forward as well. He relies on goals to get there. So there was a game against Fremantle earlier last year where he kicked 4.5 and he was absolutely on fire. I think he got 110 at that game or something like that, 117 I think it was in that game too. So look, he can score up forward, but it's just not as frequent I don't think. He needs to be playing against trash so he can actually kick some goals.
So what do you do with him then? What would you do with him?
What was the average last year, sorry?
70 on.
70.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I probably would drop him back just because I just don't think that he's going to have the consistency.
63, sorry.
Yeah,
63, yeah.
Yeah, so 63 average. I don't think he's going to have the consistency there. I'd probably drop him back. But look, he's not going to be the worst player to pick up and stream off your bench, I don't think.
Yeah, it's just the risk factor for me. It makes it really hard to pick
100%.
him. Heff.
I'm going to talk about Jaden Short. So this guy was touted as a breakout candidate last year by us. Mm-hmm. And look, he averaged 70.4, had an injury affected game of 3 in there. So Short averaged 76 without that in there. So that's starting to look a bit better than the 70, even though I'm not going to turn my nose up to 70 either at this point in time.
Definitely not.
Look, Short was injured in round 3 and missed 10 games from that point onwards. So he finished off the season well, though. He had 73 from his final 10 games of the season, so that includes a few from before he was injured. Had a top score of 106 in round 19 versus Collingwood as well. Look, 8 out of the 12 regular season games were above 70 last season, which I think is pretty good going for a defender. And when he went low, though, it was like some quite low scoring there. So there were a few scores in the 40s and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, look, to be honest, though, I think he's a really good fantasy defender because he's really bad at actually defending.
I love that.
He's awesome on the attack, though. So Richmond want the ball in his hands as well. So you only plonk a bloke like that in defence unless he's going to be damaging for your team, and you're going to want the ball in his hands. So I think he's got the makings of a good fantasy defender, and I think he's really going to shine when Hooley retires. And with Ellis gone now, he could step his game up this season straight away, I think.
Yeah, it wouldn't even surprise me to see him on a wing or something like that if he's
true.
really fit and up and running. Definitely a guy I want to have a piece of because I think there might be a few coaches who are a bit upset at how he was last year and maybe not looking at the stats well enough or looking it all through. So
just looking at the average?
Yeah, just looking at the average and going, nah, I don't want to hold him. But yeah, definitely he's got some excuses for how it all happened last year. More role ability this year with Ellis going. Obviously, Hooley potentially only has one more year, although we said that last year, and he basically played a personal best year and it was amazing. But I think Short's definitely going to be leading their back line and their run from the back line for many years to come. So take him high.
Cool. Who's next, Kaz?
Next one, Nick Vlaston. So he was a Tiger that benefited from the Alex Rance injury last year, and I think he's going to continue on with his big numbers after
Sorry,
Rance
just
is
jumping
retired.
in there, Kaz. That's how you say Rance. I say Rance, but you say Rance. Rance when you're from
Alex
South Australia.
Alex Rance.
The accent.
Anyway, what am I saying? Rance is gone, or Rance is gone, whoever you want to say it. But now, with that, Vlaston's had a PB season last year, averaged 79 points per game, which was 6 points higher than his 2018 numbers. He was outstanding in the Tigers' defence last year. His intercept marking was a real highlight for me when I was watching their games. Amazingly, Vlaston actually notched up 5 tons last year, which included a PB of 124 and also pulled out 100 in the grand final with 106 points. So he's gone from basically being a handy backup depth option to a pretty good D2 to D4. And I think with the added responsibility and the confidence he's playing with, I think he's one you really want in your side. So he averaged 80 post-bye last year, which only had the one low score of 55, and there was only the 2 other games under 70. So putting some seriously good numbers together for a key back. And for me, he kind of sits in that Michael Hurley mould, who he's a must-keep defender because, takes grabs, kicks the ball, going to be there week in, week out, and they do kind of use the ball through him. So I can see him comfortably push to a low 80s average in 2020. And it feels like he's been around for a long time, but he's only 25. So as a no-fuss defender option going forward, he's one I'd really like in my side for this year. You
talk about players like Hurley, and another one that kind of reminds me of is Jake Carlisle as well. But, I think a lot of these key defenders do have a standout season. Like, even if you look at Hurley's numbers from a couple of years ago, Carlisle too, they have this season where they go absolutely nuts and then they kind of plateau afterwards.
But I don't feel that 79's like nuts. I think 79 is what he should be at.
He could still be building, actually, especially with Rance gone. Rance.
With Rance gone. But if you look at their best 20, or my take on their best 22, they've got Asprey back there, Grimes back there, Broad back there. There's plenty of height. So if Vlaston's really good at doing the intercept marking and that, like, he can be the one that is the 4th defender back there and just absolutely mop up, take the grabs, pass it off to short Hurley, and out they go. So
yeah,
hey, I'm actually quite keen on Vlass.
I think he'll do what he did last year. Well, it's the same circumstances,
which is
so
damn good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. So he'll be fine. Yep.
Who's next?
All right, scrolling up, I have got Marlon Pickett. No, I don't. I've got Jack Ross. I'll talk about Marlon Pickett after that. Look, injuries allowed him to play last season, so a lot of people would have thought he was pretty fair way back on the depth chart in the Richmond midfield. But look, he started like a house on fire. From his first 3 games, he had scores of 86, 63 and 92. But Jack Ross, he tapered off a bit and then got injured. Averaged 62 for the season, but he had an injury-affected score of 11. I feel like everyone I'm pulling out like an injury-affected score from this year.
Trying to find the needles in the haystack.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But anyway, if you take that out, he jumps up to 71 because he played such a small number of games. Had 20-plus disposals in 3 out of 7 games as well, which is kind of good to see. I think the sign of a good midfielder is someone who can actually rack up 20 disposals a game. And yeah, so he can do that. And it looks like he can probably, with a few more games under his belt, a bit more experience, he can probably start doing that more on the regularly. But yeah, interestingly enough, this is a stat I pulled out of the brand new prospectus that I got this week. Nice. Came in the mail, the Bible, as I like to call it. Richmond won 48% of the clearances. They won the clearances 48% of the time he was in there with the centre bounces. So this was the best out of any Tigers player. So basically, Richmond win the pill when he's in the midfield. So it looks like, they might be someone who they want to get him in there. So with Jack Ross, his kicking lets him down, which kind of hurts his selection chances, I think, a bit. But as he develops, he builds on that and kind of adds more strings to his bow. He should be all right when he plays, I think. What do you reckon, Case?
Now, we saw him in the side when Cochin was injured, wasn't that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think.
So Cochin back in, he's not really nudging out Martin, Prestia, Cochin, those kind of guys for a midfield spot. So he's around the mark, but I think, you can't be too confident on what he's going to do in 2020.
Yeah.
He's definitely a stash option for me, or someone you can get late and hope that he does get that opportunity. But I don't know. I definitely would be keeping him, but I'd like to take him mid to late if you can, if he's around and you need some mid cover.
Is he a relation to Seb Ross or just the same surname?
They've both got the surname Ross.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think they're brothers or anything like that.
I definitely don't think so.
Yeah. So it's interesting though. Thought I'd just point that out there.
It's not like his name's Loston. It's Ross. Like, it's a pretty simple name, man.
Yeah, I know. But like, are they brothers? That's what I mean with Seb Ross.
They're not brothers.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was asking.
Pretty confident.
That's what I was asking.
And I'm going to be wrong. Righto, on to my last player, Sydney Stack. So it was impossible not to be impressed by him last year. So his first year in the system after being a pre-season pickup and averaged 72. For me, I don't know what it was, but I always felt that he was a lot older than he is, but he's actually only 19. So much time left in the Sydney Stack career, which is very exciting. Unfortunately, a late season injury ruined his chance of getting a flag in his first year, which is a bit sad, but no doubt he'll be hungrier than ever in 2020. So he debuted with 89 points against GWS, which is pretty damn good going, with 17 touches and 8 marks. So he was just super consistent all year. So he played 17 games, and 11 of those games he scored over 70, which is magnificent for that rookie player. I like so much about Sydney Stack. I like the way he does it all, can accumulate, can mark, tackle, get forward, kick goals if need, has great speed, great versatility, can literally play anywhere on the ground. So I'm super confident he's going to have a big year this year, proper pre-season in 2020, and I think he's only going to keep getting better and better and better. Like whether he's playing wing, half-back, he can do it all. So I think you want him in your side for the next 10 years. I think even if he does kind of have a bit of second-year blues this year, I don't think it's going to affect his scoring too much. It might not just mean he's, progressing his scores, but I don't think he's going to go backwards because he looks like an absolute star. Yeah,
it might be a bit like Carl Amon has mentioned at Port Adelaide, where he probably doesn't have the contested side to his game as much as, or probably a bit more than Amon, something like that though, but he's probably not going to have those huge numbers, average 100 plus each year because of them. But yeah, definitely a solid option. If he remains a defender, if he becomes a winger, he'll still be handy as well, but he just kind of drops down to like one of your lower mid positions, I think.
I think it just happens with, we say it each week, like if they're forward or back, they're just worth a punt because, you're going to win this year, and if they end up being a gun and being a midfielder, well, then that's just what they are. So
yeah, and sometimes depending on the depth of your league and how many you keep, sometimes it's not even worth like looking too far ahead because things change so quickly and you can only keep so many. So yeah, I think he's going to be fine this year. So yep. Get on board. All right, I'm going to talk about Marlon Pickett. So finally up to Marlon Pickett. I think I mentioned him 3 times already without actually talking about him. But
Lots of sizzle with Marlon.
Yeah, so we all know the grand final story, but look, I'm going to put it out there. In terms of fantasy, you've got to be wary with this one. All right, so the fairy tale, he looked good in that one game last season that he played, scored 73 fantasy points. Yeah, it's all right. Great game, like in pure football term, great game.
Magnificent
but in terms of fantasy, it's nothing super special.
Correct.
Then outside the grand final, just looking at his numbers over all his career, everywhere he's played, he's never been a massive ball winner. So this is another stat from the prospectus I pulled out. So Champion Data has covered 123 matches featuring Pickett, and he averages 17 touches a game from those 123 matches. So I don't know where he's going to become this ball magnet at AFL level that a lot of people are talking up, but I don't think it's actually going to happen. So he played 2 games for an average of 48 in the Waffle last season, and then 6 games for an average of 70 in the VFL. So he's 28 years old as well. So he's going to be, don't get me wrong, he's going to be a great money maker in your fantasy classic, your salary cap types. He's a must-have in that, but don't get sucked in keeper leagues. I actually think Supercoach he's probably going to go all right as well, because he's pretty class with a pill. But yeah, don't get sucked in too much in the AFL fantasy formats, keeper leagues and stuff like that. Going to be a lot of talk about him from the grand final. Going to be a lot of talk about him from fantasy classic, but with Marlon Pickett, I think we just need to cool our jets a bit on him in keeper leagues. What do you reckon?
Agree. He's one of those salary cap hype players.
Yeah.
Like he's going to probably play and he'll score because he's, rated at 180,000 or whatever it is, yes, fine. And it actually kind of works out kind of well for you as a coach, I reckon, because if you know this, he's going to go earlier than he probably should.
Yeah.
Which means you're going to get someone later, which is nice. So
the positive about him is he should play a bit of footy next season. So you will get some scores out of him. Something like, points on the park for you.
You're right. It depends what you want out of him. If you want someone who's going to be great for lots of years, obviously not, because he's old and he's, statistically hasn't done it previously. But if you want someone who's going to play most weeks, just get you a score up in the forward line, then he's a fine option.
Yeah. All right. Any players left? I think that's it, isn't it?
That's it.
All right. Let's move on to the Saints. All right, and it's time for the Saints to go marching in. Nice little snare drum solo at the start. I didn't realise that was there. So, yeah, nice. Oh, think about the microphones, mate. Come on.
That's part of the illusion.
Yeah, true. All right. We've got this thing with our microphones that if we hit the desk too hard, it makes this big booming sound in our microphone.
But it also sounds like a sweet snare drum.
Yeah, that's true. But we always forget about it. We slam our beers down or touch wood on the table and it makes this big crack and we have to re-record. So I'm a bit touchy about it.
I'm very gentle. It's very rough.
All right. Onto your St Kilda best 22. Let's do it.
Yes. So defence of Jaron Geary, Dougal Howard and Shane Savage, with Josh Battle, Jake Carlisle and Hunter Clark on the half-back line. Midfield with Jack Billings, Seb Ross and Brad Hill. Rowan Marshall, Jack Still and Dan Hanbury in the rucks, with Jade Gresham, Max King and Jack Sinclair and the half-forward line, featuring Paddy Ryder, Tim Membry and Dan Butler up forward, leaving Zach Jones, Luke Dunstan, Dylan Robertson and Callum Wilkie on the bench.
All right, so you got Dylan Robertson straight in. If he's fit and firing, doesn't need any running the twos, he comes straight back in?
Don't think so. It's a pre-season. He's going to have heaps. He's going to be well up to speed in terms of match sim. He's going to have some Marsh Series footy under his belt. I think he's going to be fine.
Yep. And, you got Zach Jones in there. Paddy Ryder, you think, plays in tandem with Rowan Marshall?
Well, that's what they've been saying all pre-season, and it probably makes sense. Losing Josh Bruce, Max King's still young. I think they're going to have to, because I don't think Memory can kind of hold that forward line all out by himself.
And that's interesting. You've got Max King starting round 1.
Why not? I think St Kilda in that they seem to have an absolute stack of those midfielder half-back types, but their tools are a bit light on. So I think that means that they're going to have to roll the dice with Ryder in the side along with Marshall and then potentially Max King there as well. Yeah,
look, I don't think they're going to be the best fantasy scorers, the Kings, but Max and his brother Ben, I'm really excited to watch them this season, see what they can do.
They looked good in snippets last year.
Definitely. So. Anyway, let's move on to some players. Oh, the other one was Kaz. You're actually going to talk about Ben Patton tonight and you don't have him in your team, so...
Yeah, look...
That's right, I talked about a not best 22 player before. So
we're going to roll through, he's going to get a game, a bit earlier on. He's borderline. All
right, cool. Just a prospective pickup.
Yes.
All right, cool. I'm going to talk about Dylan Robertson straight up. So, apparently, finally, clean bill of health for Dylan Robertson. He'll be playing again this season.
Fingers crossed, touch wood.
Yep. Don't bang the table though, Case.
No. Gently.
Hasn't played since 2018 where he averaged 63 from 4 games. That last game, he had to leave the field with the heart issue and he actually collapsed on the field, that's right. So, it was a bit scary. But good thing he's up and running again. His last full season, though, he was that was in 2017 and Robertson averaged 90 that year. He also averaged 83 in 2015 as well. But since then, or between then, he's just got scattered mixed bag averages of 60s and 70s and stuff like that around there. But, at his best, he's a reasonable scorer. With Robertson, he isn't an elite interceptor and loves to kick the footy. So he's a defender built for scoring. So if he's healthy and available, I reckon you've got to grab him. He's going to be risky, but to go early on. But if the price is right, he's available in your draft or, second, third round, depending on how many you keep in your draft, he's going to be someone you're going to have to take the punt on because the upside is huge.
It is. I don't think it's one I would take. I kind of have a bit of a distaste for guys who have, bad injury records, that kind of thing.
Yep.
The fact that he's going to turn 29 this year as well doesn't really make him the best keeper league proposition, I don't think, especially with the risk that's associated. Saying that, he could, hopefully he's fully fit and healthy and can come out and do what he did in 2017.
Yep.
But for me, I just don't think it's the play I'd want to take as the kind of coach I am.
He's more of the players that one of the players that you pick up if you're in the window, I think, because he could really propel your team to flag material.
Yeah, especially because he might actually drop a bit. People might have the same view as me and go, it's not worth it.
Or like people that are like half your league is generally good, like finals contention.
Yep.
Half league's pretty much shit. The teams that are in finals contention are the only ones who are really going to be considering, I think. So yeah, he might drop a little bit.
Right, and he could be a massive part of your premiership chances.
For sure. All right, guys, who's your first St Kilda player?
Well, I'll talk about the guy who might play if Dylan Robertson is still not right. It's Ben Patton. So we bang on about handy defender options a lot, and Ben Patton's one that I like the look of going forward. So managed to play the 13 AFL games last year, had the average of 59.5, which basically cemented his spot in the Saints backline for most of the back half of last year. So obviously there's some unknowns with the St Kilda side and how they're going to line up all throughout the board with Robertson hopefully returning, Zach Jones coming into the side, etc. But I think Patton can still feature in 2020. So had a PB of 89 in round 6, and what I like about him, he just does a bit of everything as a defender. So intercept marks, tackles, gets enough touches, that kind of thing. So went back and played 3 VFL games, when he wasn't injured or in the AFL side, averaged 90 points there from 13 touches, 6 marks and 4 tackles. And I think that's kind of like his goal. He's never going to be a ridiculously high scoring defender, but just one that's pretty consistent and will get you that 75, 80. So I think with more senior footy, he's one that's naturally going to grow his numbers. And as I said, if he can get those VFL stats, I think that's going to be really, really good. So I think there's obviously some risks just about his position in that best 22. But I think he's going to be quite a handy late pickup, especially in that sparse defender category where, there's guys you're going to have to take risks on, and I think I'd rather take a risk on him than some other players.
Yeah, look, I see him out there. He's just not one that really excites me. Not someone I've really put a lot of time into either, really, because just watching him play doesn't really look like a fantasy scorer to me. The VFL numbers kind of, spark my interest a little bit more. But look, if you don't even have him in your best 22, he might not actually, with all the influx of players this year, he might actually get a game this year.
One, St Kilda have a horrible injury history.
True, that is true.
2, you just never actually know who's going to play in St Kilda's side either. Like, as I said at the start, there's lots of guys who are very similar in terms of talent and ability and height and who they play. Like, their midfielders and half forwards and half backs are just stacked. It's just who kind of makes up their mix is the interesting one.
It's funny because you've got he's cemented his spot in the side now.
I said basically cemented his spot.
Oh, basically cemented. Sorry, all but cemented.
I wrote basically deliberately because I could backflip on this.
Okay, that's good planning. I like that. I like planning out my skills like that too.
Anyway, I own him as a rookie in our league, and I'm going to retain him because it's a free spin. No,
I get it.
But I watched I watched him a lot last year, and I thought he was not too bad. And yes, he's borderline, but there's plenty of worse players out there.
You've got to talk about trash on this podcast. It wouldn't be the keep league if you weren't.
I love talking about trash.
All right, let's move on to Josh Battleaxe. So, I'm not usually a big fan of these taller type players, but Battle was a little bit different. All right, so he played as a key forward as a junior all of his career. Switched to defence last year or late the year before that, but he's kept that attacking prowess up. So he's played 19 games for a 68 average last season. Suffered an injury around 16, which affected his average slightly. Again, another one that's injury affected. I'm just picking him tonight. I'm not going to work it out though tonight. Anyway, he had 3 scores above 100 last season though, and also had 10 scores below 70 as well. So he's kind of a bit of a mixed bag there. I think his scoring depends a little bit on matchups, not all the time, but sometimes he might just have to pay a bit more attention to his man. And when he does that, Kays, he seems to battle. Pardon the pun.
Lucky you're a father. You can get away with that shit.
I'm worried though that eventually, like you look at people like Jack Lacoste up at Gold Coast. There's obviously a plan that they put him in defence to get him behind the pill, to learn to read the play, to learn off the best forwards in the competition. Do you think there's a chance that this is all the experiment is, or do you reckon he's shown enough that he is going to be one of those rebounding, taller type defenders?
I am a big Josh Badal fan.
Okay.
So I think that with hopefully Jake Carlisle being fit for once at St Kilda and Dougal Howard coming into that mix, I think that he can play that third tall, the floating tall, the intercept tall.
Sorry, that was the other one that kind of made me think a little bit whether that he might go back forward and maybe try to recapture his junior form, especially with Max King.
Big Dougal can play it forward too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, true. Yeah, but like just because with Max King as well being so raw, I thought there might be a chance. I don't think it would be wise by Brent Ratton to actually play him up forward, but I thought there might be a chance that he might go back up there and just fuck everything up.
I just really like the look of Josh Badal last year. He was very impressive in his numbers, and his numbers stacked up for one of those kind of players. Like, yes, I know you don't like those taller blokes, but he was very good.
I like him when they play this role, when it's clear like this. So, yeah.
My thinking is, if someone's playing the role well, why change it just to ruin, or just to do something else? I know we're not playing fantasy football in real life.
I'm also thinking they might have other holes to fill, especially with Bruce gone as well.
All right, but would you keep him?
Yeah, of course. Oh, yes. But my team's shit. Like, I'd keep anyone.
I'd keep him. My team's a little bit better than yours.
I'd keep a sack of spuds. But the other thing is as well, like, whether he's going to be the best scoring option week in, week out, he's almost at streamer level with some of the low scores he can have where you've got to try to pick his best. But look, if you're averaging 68, it's getting close to a player that you can plonk on the field and play each week.
For me, he's young and he was highly touted, and I think, he's just kind of going to come into his own. Still very young, only, what have we got, 21. So, there's so much footy left ahead of him.
I'm more than happy to be wrong on this one, but that just being a forward growing up and them, I guess, St Kilda really having a bit of a lack of tall forwards as well, that just concerns me that he might just have to move away from this role at some stage just to do the team thing. That's the only thing I have on him, really.
Hopefully you're wrong.
Hopefully I am. All right. Do you have another one, Case?
I do. Ed Phillips. So he was a guy.
I remember this guy.
Yeah, we had him kind of pegged in for a breakout last year. And
that's right.
Another swing and a miss for the keeper league, unfortunately. But no, we get most right. We're just a couple, who get wrong occasionally.
We're human, Case.
We are human. But really, it was tough when he couldn't even get a game in the Saints side last year. Only played the 4 AFL games, which was from rounds 8 to 11, and only knocked up the average of 54, which is very miserly. So what's actually more disappointing is he went backwards. So he played 7 games in 2018 and averaged 73 there. Now, a mid-season injury did ruin any chance of that breakout because he obviously got his spot into the side and was starting to build up. But, his numbers in the VFL were all right. Averaged 94 from 9 games and included 2 tons there of 113 and 115. But apart from that was just that very consistent 80s, 90s wingman kind of role, which is fine. Role for them in everyone's side. He's super fit. He's the time trial king of St Kilda, which,
You love a time trial.
I do love a time trial king. He's not going to be my guy though. But he's been winning the time trials for fun. But unfortunately, you can be as fit as you want, but you still have to, 1, get a game and 1,
you're making
get the footy.
sense for a change. You're talking about time trials and then talking sense.
Oh, when it's like November and December and there's just nothing else going on in the AFL landscape, you just want those pre-season results, don't you?
All there is in the news is time trials. So we just got to talk about them.
And it's awesome. But anyway, for me, I reckon if Zach Jones and Brad Hill didn't arrive, I'd be keen on Phillips featuring this year, and one I would have taken a flyer on and hopefully got a bit late. But he needs a good year because if he has a bad year, he's out of contract this year. Going forward, it's very risky. So he has scoring ability, but his best 22 chances have just taken a massive hit with their 2 inclusions. Look, I know guys like Jack Nunes and Blake Acres have gone, so hopefully they can just replace, Jones and Hill replace them, and there is a chance for Phillips, but I'm just not quite seeing it. So I think for me, just take him late, because if he does play, he's probably going to score quite well, especially based on what he can do, and I think he's going to be very, very undervalued based on his average last year. So if, last couple of picks and he just kind of scrounging around, I think he might be worth a pick. Young Egg. I keep saying egg.
Every Ed is now just an egg to you.
Ed Phillips.
All right, old Eggy boy. Look, I'm off of him after that bad call last year, so I don't want to recapture that one. No, now he'll probably break out and I would have been wrong twice. Yeah.
Well, I believe in you, Ed. If you can get a game, I'll back you in, my friend. Nah, that's Egg Langdon.
Oh, sorry. All right, let's move on to my last player. And I'm going to talk about Hunter Clark. Geez, I've had it easy tonight. I've talked about 3 real St Kilda up-and-coming superstars.
Yeah,
and you've had
you
some
left me-
real trash to talk
There's
about.
honestly not much to talk about at St Kilda.
There really isn't.
Seeing as you stole all my favourites.
Yeah, so that's what happens when you get to the show doc first, mate. First in, best dressed. Happened to me the first 6 weeks. Your turn to
Yes.
suffer. Anyway,
Yes.
Hunter Clark, serious breakout candidate. Averaged 77.4 from 14 games in 2019. Clark averaged... Oh, this is what's the best part about this. So that 77.4 doesn't actually look that good. But if you look at his numbers after the bye, so mid-season moving into his halfback role, 85 average after the bye. So
Nice.
that's pretty sweet from Hunter Clark there. He's an awesome ball winner, both inside and outside, which is going to be good for his fantasy scoring as well. There's always a bit of... worry that he's going to move into the midfield too, but I think at the moment he's kind of firmly planted in defence. But on top of that, he's a great pressure player too, which also results in a lot of tackles. So scoring history, had a 108 average as a junior in the TAC Cup. So he's always had that potential. What I do every year, actually, in a lot of my last picks, I go to the back of the prospectus and I look at all the averages of the juniors and just see who the best fantasy scorers are. And Hunter Clark is a guy I'm actually just filthy not getting my hands on last year because he was one I really wanted to pick up. So just on that back of that junior scoring.
Who'd you pick up early last year? Was it Michael Hibbard?
Yeah, he was one of them.
Well, that's your own
He was going to bounce back. It was.
I have
it was
no
happening.
sympathy for you. Suck it.
Don't get me started on my strategy from last year, but it actually failed. So yeah.
Yeah, don't do that same strategy this year, man. That's putrid.
No, I won't.
Anyway, don't need to talk about him. He's going to be too good for the pod.
Yeah,
going
2G4P
forward.
hashtag.
Definitely. Someone who is definitely not good, too good for the... Someone who's going to be on the pod a lot, basically, because he's not that good, is Jack Bytel. Now,
That's a bit harsh.
I was scratching around for my last player. You were like, do Jack Bytel. He's going to be a gun. And I thought, oh, okay, whatever. And then there was a few people on Twitter who were getting a bit jacked up on Bytel. And look, for some reason, there seems to be a lot of hype. And it must be from the salary cap world, which does happen because he's, underpriced and had been hyped last year. Basically, he missed all of last year, had back surgery. He was highly touted as a 17-year-old in 2017 and did average the 105 in the TAC Cup back as a 17-year-old. 2018, injuries started and his numbers dropped to 88 in the TAC Cup as an older player. He's never dominated an under-18 carnival. He's averaged 55 and 45 across the 2 carnivals he's played in. He's an inside midfielder, but a handballer and a tackler. So we've got some good and some very, very bad. We do not like handballers. We do like tacklers. But all reports coming out of training are that he's coming off back surgery all very well. But one, he's played 0 senior footy against real men. And he's just not someone I'm willing to take a chance on in 2020. I need some old men. I need some real men stats.
Real men experience.
Yeah.
Experience with real men.
Look, sure, he might be good, but not everyone. There's a bit of hype around him, and I think it's salary cap hype, which is fine. That does happen. But for someone in a keeper league, there's no way I'm going to take some kid who's never played a senior game of football off a season off back surgery and going to be super hype on him. Just no.
That whole segment reminded me of that scene from The Simpsons where Homer's trying to buy that cursed Krusty doll, and he's like, "That's good." That's bad. That's good. But the yogurt is also cursed. That's bad. That's what that whole section was, basically.
Anyway, I've landed on bad. I've landed on bad.
All right. Yeah, look, there is some hype from that, 2017. As a 17-year-old, the scores there. A lot of hype there. And
It was going to be like a number 1 draft pick. Then he got injured, basically.
And the injuries really pushed him back down. So
back surgery is serious shit, man.
Yeah, I know, but there's still some potential there. If he can bounce back, like worth a late stash if he can't.
Could you see yourself taking him?
Nah. Oh, maybe in we do rookie drafts, so the guys that you can keep for an extra year or whatever, maybe way down there in the rookie draft, I'd have a look at him. But not in my senior list this year.
If you're 18, averaging 88 in the TAC Cup and 45 in an under 18 carnival, that is just nah.
Yeah, but Jai Caldwell put up similar numbers, and there's talk of him
He's still
playing.
not a fantasy gun yet, is he?
Yeah, but I reckon he could turn into one. But anyway, let's wait and see. Does that wrap up, or do I have one more? No, that's it.
That's it. Jury's out, but don't take Jack Bartel.
Okay, cool. While we're here, guys, before we get into the listener question, let's talk about the membership. So if you want to support the podcast, you like the work we do every week, just consider maybe signing up as a member and just helping us out and helping us grow this podcast. Everything we make goes back into the podcast to make it bigger and better for you listeners. So yeah, if you like what we do, just maybe just consider throwing us a bit of support. But up there, if you are a supporter, if you are a member, we've got the state league scores for you. We've got draftee fantasy scores. We've got the breakout tracker with our sexy new graph, thanks to Adam out there.
Nice.
Then we've got rankings and the mini episodes that go with each set of rankings coming out every Friday.
Yep.
We've got midfielders coming out this week. We've got forwards coming out the week after that. We've done our defenders. We've done our rucks. So many resources for you guys.
Yep.
But since last week, Kay, as we spruiked the gold members group, and we've had an influx of people, like more so gold members that signed up and never joined the group, and now everyone's just kind of, oh yeah, we've got that, and
the group has gone bananas.
There's questions going left, right, and centre. There's 4 or 5 posts every day, big discussion on different people's lists.
Yep.
It's a great place. Well, our listeners on that, they're like the diehards. They're the guys that like know as much as us. Like they're the guys that just absolutely live and breathe this stuff. So you ask a question to those guys, you're basically getting the similar type or the same type of analysis you get from this podcast.
But it's not just for the experienced coaches out there. It's for the if you're a brand new coach and you've never played a keeper league or a draft league before, jump on that group, ask the questions that need to be asked. Everyone just wants to help each other out.
I'm gonna put it out there. It's the best keeper league specific brains trust in the country. Okay.
Wow. Is it the only one?
No, don't worry about that.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so get in on board this because it's actually sweet. It's an awesome community as well, and it's just good to have a chat on there as well.
Yep.
Post your teams, get some reviews. Who you think you should keep out of this player?
Yep.
There's lots of polls going on. People are adding Zach Dawson as a third option to the poll. So
bring him back.
Yeah, Josh Boosman, I saw him one too.
Yeah.
So some classic fantasy jokes in there. Anyway, so each week we like to read out a few gold members. So thank you to the following people who have subscribed to support the podcast. We got James Richardson, we got Big Cox, Andrew Zanker, Dave Simpson, and James Wilcourt. So yeah,
very well done. Thanks, guys, and yeah, keep all the questions and the content coming onto that Gold Members Facebook group. But also keep hitting us up on Twitter and Facebook with questions, etc. It's coming up to crunch time for a few keeper league list lodgements, etc. So plenty of questions getting around. So keep the content coming in. We love it.
All right, we will get to the questions in a sec, I promise. But we're just going to get into a podcast review because we've actually got a few more that have popped up on the Apple reviews there. So we've got one here from Dingo Boyo. So he's someone who's actually quite often on our Twitter as well, getting around us. So thanks for that, Dingo Boyo. But he's written, outstanding new listener coming from all other fantasy podcasts. This one has quickly become one of my favourites. Quality, in-depth analysis of lesser-known players. The boys speak so damn well. Kays, you've got a bit of radio experience, but I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but
he has low standards.
Must be going okay. Anyway, always now waiting for the next pod to drop and put in my ears. Keep up the good work, lads. Thumbs up emoji. The greatest compliment you can get in tech speak.
Damn straight.
All right, thanks, Dingo Boyo. We'll finally move on to the listener questions. Finally into the listener questions for this week. Lots come through again. Can't get to them all, but we pick up the ones that we haven't talked about, or the players that involve players we haven't talked about already in the podcast, and anything unique out there as well. So, Kays, what's the first question?
First one's from @Bagels4. His question is, Gresham staying close to goals, or do they use his X factor on the ball? Has said his pre-season that he's going to have a good mid-forward split. What are your thoughts on Jade?
Yeah, at the end of last season, or throughout last season, he was used in the midfield quite a bit. I think with the inclusion of Zach Jones and Brad Hill, I don't know if he'll get any more midfield time, but I think he should play a similar type role, and pretty much exactly what they've stated, pretty much a mid-forward split. What do you think?
It's annoying because I reckon he could be a really, really good midfielder alone. But for St Kilda and probably in general, I think he's too good a half-forward flanker kind of
He's
player.
A very dangerous player.
Yeah, exactly. And he's kind of a bit more quality over quantity too. So I just don't think we'll ever see the best fantasy game from Jade Gresham, but shit, he's a good player to watch.
Yeah, maybe if he gets traded or something like that, where he could star a bit more.
He's just too valuable. Like, it's just like it's like Toby Green. Like, I'm sure Toby Green would be an absolute jet if he went into the midfield, but he's so valuable up forward for GWS that's where he plays. So.
Good analysis, good comparison.
At Footy Fonzie, how much of an impact will Robertson be to Battle's improvement and output?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. Like, there's no guarantees that Robertson's going to remain fit anyway. But look, I said it earlier that there's a slight chance that Battle could be used up forward at some stage too. It's for me, I can't really make a real assessment. It's one of those wait and see type situations. They're not. I don't know. Like, Battle's a lot taller. Robertson's a bit smaller, nuggetier. Runs a bit more and uses the ball probably a little bit better as well. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I think there's enough contrast between the two that they could complement each other because Battle could take the marks and things like that, and he could feed it, and then Robertson could feed off that. What do you reckon, Case?
I don't see Battle's improvement going backwards, if that makes sense. I think that Robertson might end up coming in and playing a bit more of a role as opposed to what he was doing at his peak a couple of years ago. So not that people have gone necessarily past him, but I think that, the development of Battle and a few other guys back there is more important than Robertson coming in and playing that, his role or his fantasy-friendly role that he did a couple of years ago. So I'm still pretty keen on Battle going forward, and I think Robertson will probably just come in there and complement him quite nicely.
All right, next question from @StraightBreaks. Luke Dunstan, can he maintain his 2019 output, or will he get swamped by the rest of the Saints midfield scorers? I have him, Hannah's, Seb Ross in 33 squad, 27 keeper, 10-man league, delisting deadlines next week, and not sure he'd rather keep a Constable or a Jack Ross. What do you think about Luke Dunstan?
Man, it's tough to have to put your deadline in before the start of the Marsh series.
Oh God, yeah. You want to actually see a few players.
Yeah, and the more I've researched the Saints this week, the more I really want to see what they do as a unit and who's in their best 22 or in their mix or who's around the mark in the Marsh series. So it's a tough one to say. I think Luke Dunstan's always going to be a good fantasy scorer when he gets a game, but will he be a best 22 week in, week out at St Kilda? You'd probably think so, but crazy things have happened. With guys like Jack Nunes and Blake Acres out, helps him, but at the same time, you get Brad Hill and Zach Jones in there, so they're kind of taking potentially some of that more midfield time that he would have got naturally with those other guys leaving. So for me, I think. It's so hard because I want to see Charlie Constable too in the Marsh series. So I think you've got to keep Dunstan because you actually know what he can do, and he was in their best 22 at the end of last season. So you kind of just got to go, right, well, he's in there, he can score, roll with that, as opposed to taking a flyer on someone like Constable just being one in the side and then two going.
Constable's going to be a good scorer, but there's no certainty he's best 22 for the time being as well. All depends also as well, like how long you want to wait before your team's good as well. Like if you're contending next year, you'd want to keep Dunstan. Mm-hmm. You could take a flyer on Constable, but there's no guarantees with him and Jack Ross as well. At least Dunstan, you've got a bit more of an idea of how he's going to go, I think.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
All right, next question.
It's from Matthew Nitschke. He asks, what are the best rookies at each line?
So I'm going to assume he's talking about keeper leagues and not AFL Fantasy Classic cheapos. So he wants to know the best potential fantasy scorers at each line. So I'm going to go with, for defenders, I'm going to go with Will Day, or I like Trent Rivers as well. Will Day had probably the best fantasy scoring output at junior level for those defenders, but I do like the look of Trent Rivers as well. With the mids, that's an easy one. Matthew Rowell or Devon Robertson. Just got to hope Devon Robertson can get a game at some stage. Just don't know if that's perfect. Ruck's also very easy.
Yes.
Luke Jackson was the best fantasy scoring,
especially with the breaking news that Braden Pruce has gone down for 8 to 10 weeks. So if Max Gorn's at all niggly, man, he might have to step up and ruck round one.
It was funny because we were saying last week, does he any chance of getting a game alongside Gorn? And we said no, and now he's going to get a game.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Anyway, and then forwards, Connor Butterick or Butterick. I'm still not sure how to say it. I've got to wait for the commentators to say it round one, hopefully. But look, he is one of the better fantasy scorers from the TAC Cup last year, or NAB League, whatever they call it now, playing for the Gold Coast Suns Academy. Also has knee full form. The only difference is he played in midfield in those games and not as a forward, but he's listed as a forward now for fantasy. So he's one of the better scorers. Also like Jeremy Sharp as well as a fantasy scorer too. So I think those are going to be, the best potential. Might not be the best pickups in AFL fantasy or this season going forward, but I think in long term they're going to be the better fantasy scorers.
I just want to add in my two Sydney boys and South Australian lads,
Love
Will
those
Gould
boys.
and Dylan Stevens. They have real men form.
I think they're going to be good and they're going to play this year, but I don't think they're going to be the best fantasy scorers. But I think they're going to be fine.
Dylan Stevens has been likened to Josh Kelly.
Yeah, I know. They're going to be good fantasy scorers, but
How can he be better than a Rolls Royce?
Best fantasy scorers out
Like
of this
a
draft.
Tesla or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't know. I don't know anything about cars.
No, neither. I'm not the right person to ask, Kate.
But he's a new model, so everyone's going electric. So I think he's going to be a
So he's
really
like
expensive
a Camry
Tesla.
hybrid. Yeah.
No. No, that's disrespectful.
He's a taxi.
I apologise to my co-host Dylan. That's unacceptable behaviour. Next question, Tim Davies. I'm in a league where we keep 10 players at season's end. He's got 9 sorted, but needs to choose between Mills and Fiorini.
All right. I prefer Fiorini. I just think he's got the highest ceiling. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to. It probably depends on who your other 9 are and if you need a defender. I would love, as a Callum Mills owners, that he gets a bit more midfield time this year and actually starts improving his scoring output. But if you're only keeping 10, I think you want to keep the best 10. You don't want to be too worried about defenders, forwards, mids. I think you just keep the highest scoring 10, and Fiorini is that guy.
Absolutely. With 10 players, you just keep the best possible averages that you can get, I think. Don't worry about even speculatives. Don't worry about potential. Just pick the best.
Yes. Next question from Gold member Andrew Zanka. If Rob Riley O'Brien goes down, who is the handcuff we need to cover him?
The most annoying part about this is the 2 guys that are going to cover him in the ruck don't have ruck status in fantasy. So I think the 2 most likely guys to cover him are Billy Frampton and it's Elliot Himmelberg, isn't it, the Crows? So they're probably the 2 likely guys to step in. Neither have ruck status.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to pick those guys up and really hope that they either get ruck status after Riley O'Brien goes down, but you're going to have to pick up a gap fill in between. The other one is, though, like Kieran Strawn. He's 24, so I think he was picked up as more of a mature age recruit, and he showed some good signs last year, so he could be a goer by the end of the season. Like if Rob went down, like he probably just needs a bit more experience at the sample level in an AFL system to get to that level, but they might not have a choice eventually as well.
It's actually crazy. So like, because the coaches panel put out that article about who the Ultimate Footy released their, guys who are getting the extra DPPs for Ultimate this year, and their ruckman that they added just didn't make any sense. So Sam Reid from Sydney got it. Sean McKernan, fair enough. Peter Wright hardly ever goes in the Gold Coast ruck. Sava Radaglia, maybe he's a bit of a hybrid.
Hitter.
Harry Himmelberg, he's forward ruckman, and then they've given it. So they've taken it away. Fantasy have taken it away from Billy Frampton, and then Ultimate haven't given it back, even though the Crows have genuinely. He's the Crows' second ruckman.
In fairness, like Frampton didn't go anywhere near a ruck contest last season, so that's what you got to go on. But basically, by their standards, any pinch hitter should be a ruck because that's what they're going by. It's like Ultimate Footy, I find, has a real kind of history with this where they do things kind of half-assed or they don't really put a lot of research in it. There's things like that. Or, for example, 2 years ago when Justin Westhoff was playing as a second ruck and it came in halfway through the season because one of Ryder went down, or I can't remember who it was. I think Ryder went down. And he didn't get it all season as that DPP. He got it in AFL Fantasy, but then he got it the following season when he doesn't play ruck at all. Like it happens all the time. It's like they don't look at anything outside of Victoria. I don't really know how it goes.
Well, I had that issue. So I had basically the exact same issue as Riley O'Brien has last year with Tim English. So because Tom Campbell moved on, the second ruckman for Western Bulldogs was Jackson Trengove.
Yeah.
But he only had back status going into last year. So you go, well, do you take him on the hope that he actually eventually gets the ruck status added on, or do you have to go and find another back at ruckman? So I ended up not ever drafting Trengove, but then getting him later from someone else, paying overs, etc. And then had to get like Nathan Vardy as my second ruckman because I knew he was going to play. So it's like it's a genuine conundrum.
It's really annoying when you don't have a true handcuff. Like as a
handcuffs are life. Yeah.
I've had Paddy Ryder for the last few years, and it's been like since last year, but there was no real backup ruckman for a long time, so it was hard.
Yeah.
All right.
Next question, Adam Clayton. My league is starting a 28-player keeper league this year. How many kids would you be looking to stash away with your final picks, or do you target other kinds of players at this stage?
Yeah, look, it depends on how many you actually end up keeping at the end of the season.
So set that rule right now.
Yeah. So if you haven't set that, if you're starting a league and you haven't set how many you keep, get that done. We made that mistake and you pay for a long time if you don't, especially if you don't think about it, you don't consider it, you don't get it right. We did it on the whim of like a vote mid-season and it was silly. So think about it. pick that out. Now, if you keep like, you know, a large number, if you keep say 25 of those, definitely stash some kids. You've got some room to stash some kids. But if you only keep it around 15 or so, just don't bother. Pick your best kind of players that you can get because they're the ones that you might most likely going to keep at the end of the season. Try to get 15 solid players. And, you know, if you're getting down to picks 20, like, for example, Ryan Marsh would have been taken late in so many drafts last year, but he rockets up the list to your keepers to the top, near the top of your keeper pool because of, you know, the way he performed last season. So you never know who you're going to pick up later on in the draft that's going to just skyrocket and become so valuable the next season. So if you're only keeping around 15 or, you know, less, just pick the best players, I think.
Now, I know that you always bang on that someone's going to win it the first year. So you can either draft for that way, or what I like to do when I'm starting a keeper league fresh is go for those players who are probably 4 or 5 years in the system. They're 23 to 26. You're going to get 10 years, 5 to 10 years out of all of those players. And you know what they're like. You know their scoring ability. You know their scoring potential. You're not taking any risks, and you're not taking any risks on guys who are going to retire in the next 2 to 3 years.
And then you approach the 10-year mark and you still haven't won a flag. So
but you feel good about the strategy that you went in with.
Oh, man. Pat yourself on the back. Feel good about it.
My strat was good.
All right. Paul Milne. Does Zach Jones become a defender option at the Saints?
I don't think so, but saying that, he could. As I said before, that there seems to be a lot of guys in the St Kilda side who are of similar, you know, ability and can play a few roles. So I think it's definitely wing time for Zach Jones. I think he's paid his penance in the back line for Sydney over the years, and I think he's going to be released into that midfield wing for the Saints. So I don't think so, but one to monitor.
Yep, I agree. I think the way he played last season, he wouldn't be recruited as a defender. They wanted to play, you know, pinch it in the midfield, or adding to their midfield depth, really. That's what I meant to say. Sam UEK, so he's got the next question. What does he ask?
Yes, he says, do you anticipate St Kilda to be more or less fantasy friendly under Ratton compared to Richo?
Look, it's hard to tell for sure, but I did some number crunching on this, so I actually got real analytical, and I worked out which coach was scoring better fantasy-wise. All right, so under Richo averaged 14.85 per week, adding up all the players, and under Ratton, the St Kilda Saints averaged 15.38 per week. So he was better off. The Saints were better off under Ratton in terms of fantasy by 53 points per game. Nice. I think just the eye test as well, though. You saw blokes like Seb Ross just start scoring well again, Steele.
Hunter Clark.
Yeah, players like that, they just seem to be better under Ratton. So I think the game plan, just from the eye test, actually suits Saints a bit better.
Good question, Sam.
Just a little shout out to Sam as well. I think Sam's the one that runs the Game Time Decision website, which is a website that I guess it releases like last minute player news and things like that. It's all fantasy related, so fantasy news related, and it comes out on Twitter and through his website as well. So it's a pretty cool concept. So check out his website, gametimedecision.com.au. All right, Kays, what's the next question?
And the lucky last question for tonight is from Dale Paul Travers. This is a good one, Heff. So what do you think of a reverse round? The opposition coach gets to pick your team. You get to pick his/hers. But they have to be playing players. If they put a 0 on your side, it automatically means 85 points. So it could actually be a good idea for buy rounds or for some other, you know, options. What are your thoughts there?
I like this sort of stuff for like the losers finals. Like you do these kind of games and things like that. So in our league, we've had I think it was even a regular season game between two cellar dwellers. We've had a tank off.
Yes.
So a tank off
didn't matter for the whole. They couldn't move.
Yeah, basically.
Yep.
So a tank off is where you have to pick your shittest team and put it on the park, but you can't have a 0.
Yep.
So if you got a 0, you add 100 points to the score. So you actually try to pick your bat, make a 22, that's the worst, and then try to lose. Yep. So that's a tank off. And I find this very, very similar and a very intriguing prospect. So yeah, it could be a great buy round game, or even the loser consolation finals, that sort of stuff, or even for dead rubbers. It's kind of fun.
It's a good way for the consolation finals because at least that way you can actually have a wooden spooner.
Exactly. Well, even if you're trying to decide, because a lot of people do that thing and I find it always hard to do this, the consolation finals decides the number 1 draft pick. But that means the shittest team in the comp kind of loses out because they're the shittest team for a reason.
Yep.
But also you don't want tanking in there. So if you do like the reverse try to like reverse way of winning, I guess, is to actually try to make the shittest team without putting zeros on your field. Could be a pretty fun way to go about it.
Very good fun. I like it.
All right, that wraps up the questions for tonight, and that wraps up the show. So I don't know, anything else you want to say, Kays? Or we think we've covered everything from Port Adelaide, St Kilda, and Richmond.
I think we have. The last one we've got is next week. So Sydney West Coast and the Bulldogs, and we are done for our previews for this season.
And then we're into the Marsh series, Kays.
We are. It's actually very exciting. It's, what is it? Next Thursday, I think the first game is. So the 20th. So we're almost a week away.
When is the State of Origin game?
No idea.
Yeah,
I think it's in the middle of the week. So or something like that.
Ah, yeah, cool. So that'll be coming up too. So we might be able to
I could not give a shit about that.
Well, there might be some fantasy things we could take out of it. Who knows?
Not keeper league relevant guys. So they're not going to pick,
True. No, they might pick some guys that are, that are just good players that aren't fantasy relevant, but that could make that step. Someone like
it would be fun to watch, but
someone like Titch Edwards last year. Similar type thing.
Yeah, he's a bloody good player now, Titch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you never know. There might be something coming out of it. But anyway, hit us up on our socials: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Links are in the description. Also, the membership stuff all in the description.
Yep.
Check that out if you want to join up. And we'll talk to you next week.
See you guys. Have a good week.